Silver lining. The weekend is here. We've got football tonight. My word, Melbourne all of a sudden is starting to feel like that warm blanket that we all know and love. It's Andy here. I hope you are very, very well. And to finish the week off, I thought we'd get a more educated financial opinion on the show. So we've got one of the best in the business, Shannon Norton, who is a bookkeeper by trade, also turned his hand to counselling with the volume of small businesses that he's had to try and help navigate through these incredibly stormy waters that we found ourselves within. But as a consequence of that, he has a view of the business landscape, particularly with small businesses, that I think would be well worth having a listen to. Shannon, mate, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Thanks ever so much for joining us on the show on a Friday afternoon. Greatly appreciated. Have you got anything planned for the weekend?
Golf, to be honest. That's my only plans at this point. Yep.
Well, the weather looks like it'll be tip-top for it. Mate, before we crack on and get stuck into your wealth of knowledge and information, give us a bit of a highlight reel as to who you are, your business and where you're from and what got you to where you are now.
So I'm a chartered accountant by trade, and I work for a firm called Prosper Advisory. So we're an accounting, bookkeeping and financial planning firm. So one of my key roles within the firm is managing our bookkeeping services. And then I also help clients with their tax obligations, and I can also help clients with basically reviewing their business performance and analysing and providing advice around how a business is coping, travelling, and what they should be doing. So yeah, that's me in a very quick nutshell.
Good stuff, man. And you are Melbourne-based, right?
Yes, yeah, we're based in Bentley. Yep.
Excellent. What's the home setup all about? We were supposed to have wedding bells, I believe.
Yeah, we were. Unfortunately, that got postponed. Me and my fiance were supposed to get married in August. But yeah, we literally this week finally made the decision to postpone to next year. So going through all that.
How's that been? How's that been on the psyche? You get yourself, or you're getting yourself all pumped up to tie off and what have you. How have you and your beloved better half taken it?
We've been coping quite well, actually. So a lot of people were surprised. They expected us to be quite stressed or upset, but I think we just accepted the fact that COVID-19 was going to affect it. We pretty much just waited until there was more guidance, and I think now that we've made the decision, we're actually sort of feeling a bit more positive about it and able to get back onto planning and so yeah.
Good stuff. So, what's your fiance's name?
Melissa.
And what does Melissa do?
She's a psychologist with the education department. So she does counselling and testing and various other stuff that I don't even understand. So yeah.
So you don't get away with anything basically because she can read your body language like a bloody book.
Yeah, she analyses me down to a T.
Oh, mate, bless you. Right. So, purpose of the Silver Lining, the second series, is all about getting up off the canvas and rocking a great comeback in 2020. Now, mate, with your position and your position when it comes to other businesses and so on and so forth, no doubt you will have seen some fairly dramatic and some fairly tense situations and had some pretty tough conversations, right? How's it all been for you this year?
Yeah, so like when COVID-19 hit in March, I think pretty much everyone went into a crisis mode. More or less, like most businesses are sort of been affected at different rates, but yeah, pretty much everyone had to adapt like real fast, whether they were closing down, whether they had to move to online, whether they had to basically cut staff or whatever they were doing, they went into a bit of a crisis mode. JobKeeper and the cash flow support and all the grants that came out from the government, I think has really provided a lot more confidence in a lot of industries and a lot of businesses. So now I think that a lot of businesses are sitting quite reasonably comfortable, and they're sort of just trudging along with JobKeeper, or they may be waiting for the restrictions to either lighten up for them, or or waiting for their customers to come back. So I think a lot of businesses are feeling pretty confident at the moment, which is good. But I think a key focus for a lot of businesses is at the moment they got to start thinking ahead. So they got to move away from that crisis mode. Rather than just sitting stagnant, I think they really need to move into what I would say like a recovery or a growth sort of mode, and planning ahead for that. Because pretty much like the way everything is at the moment. I mean, every industry is different. Every business has its differences, but like, I feel like if a business sort of sits stagnant, their competitors are going to get ahead. Their competitors are going to do stuff that maybe they're not doing. So I think businesses need to realize that they can't. Everything may not just go back to normal. So, how you did things before, what product and service you were providing before, you may not be able to just go back. So I think, a key focus for a lot of businesses at the moment, and our discussions with clients at the moment, is planning ahead and getting into that recovery mode. Every industry is obviously different. Every business has its own risks and value and their own product and service. But they really need to sit down and start thinking it through and planning ahead.
So, mate, I mean, with respect to the whole, planning for the future and what have you, I think one big thing that I think a lot of businesses are being caught short on is that lack of foresight, the lack of sort of looking ahead to the next quarter, year, whatever the case may be. Interesting though, considering on the other side, you've got those that have got a really solid business plan who just pretty much had to throw it in the bin in March, right? So, mate, in terms of before we start talking about really kicking on in the second half, I mean, in your opinion, and this is one of the things I'm really, really interested to hear about, what have been the real key sort of 2 or 3 lessons, or real, like the 2 or 3 really reoccurring mistakes that have been realized that have resulted in people being in a worse position throughout the Corona cloud?
So a key thing was, basically one of the key things is businesses really needed to adapt very fast. They needed to look at what was available to them straight away, like looking at whether they could get JobKeeper, whether they could get the grants and things like that. So those businesses that got straight onto that are at a much better advantage than those that didn't. And you would sit there and think that every business was like, as soon as they heard about JobKeeper, they looked into it. But I've spoken to many businesses, like I straight away, I was on the phone to all my clients, going through, making sure that they got what they could get. I've spoken to some businesses since, and some of them are just sitting there going, "Oh no, I didn't really bother looking into that." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you?" Like, that was money there to support you during a very crucial time and a difficult time. So I think that was a key thing. Businesses
why? I mean, was it just sort of a bit of a sort of laissez-faire, not really that fussed type thing? I mean, why were they being like that?
I don't know. I find that a little bit of a not accepting the fact that things are changing as well. Also, just assuming, I don't get that. I'm not going to be eligible for that. When you actually look at their numbers again and you go, no, you could have gotten that. A lot of people, I remember, like, I spoke to quite a few businesses in March and April, and they're like, "Oh no, business is fine." We're they could see that there's still had customers coming in and things like that. And then it got to, say, late April and May, and then there was just a dead stop. Everything stopped, and then it was at that point that it hit them. and they're going, oh no, all right, now we're in trouble. We need to actually start thinking ahead. So I think pretty much any business, March, April, hopefully we're starting to plan and think ahead, and we're preparing for what could happen or what was going to go wrong. Because businesses, we're all pretty much, most businesses have been affected in some way or another. Unfortunately, most have been dropped in revenue. Some have probably had a completely opposite effect, where they're actually got higher sales, more customers coming in, but they've had to react differently. So and
they might be one. So I actually know one or two of these businesses where it's gone the other way, but then as a consequence of it going the other way, there's been a lack of infrastructure or preparation for that sort of quickly boom growth, and there will have been a lot of money lost there as well. So it's not a case of it all just being down and down and down. There will have been some businesses that, through lack of planning, missed out on some unbelievable opportunities, right?
And when they're not ready for that and things go wrong, their customers lose faith in them. And they may not get those customers back. So, it's basically, I think a key thing over these months is just adapting. Like every business, you can't just continue on business as usual, because whether it's COVID-19 or other factors that can occur or other threats and risks in a business, you've got to adapt to it. So, and I find a lot of business owners, they like just continuing with what they know. They operate the same product, same service, everything's as normal, same technology. And eventually it doesn't work. Something goes wrong. COVID-19 unfortunately comes along, and those businesses that adapted, improved their service, had the foresight and the plans already in place. Not that I expected any business to plan for COVID-19, but for any businesses that was sort of already thinking ahead and planning ahead, that were adapting quite quickly, were the ones that and will continue to benefit from this. So really a key lesson is, irrespective of the trajectory that you find yourselves on, it's always wise to have best case and worst case scenario covered off. So when it comes to things like decisions moving forward, you talk about being like you're talking about the whole topic of adapting. While they are looking at making these decisions, the key thing with the whole sort of planning process will be to absolutely make sure that you look at the really bad stuff, but also the really, really great stuff. So best case scenario, we make changes A, B, and C. Best case scenario is where our revenue goes up by 3x or 5x. And therefore we will need to make sure that these three elements of a business can satisfy that growth, whether it is client management systems, whether it is infrastructure from an IT point of view generally, all that sort of stuff, and then look at worst case. Is that the sort of thing that you look to do with all of your clients, or is that something that realistically businesses really need to approach you to do, because ultimately it's their business, right? Yeah. So I basically, like, our focus now with our clients is a lot of basically planning from here on, planning for what that recovery is going to look like. So things like that we're doing at the moment would be doing a SWOT analysis, looking at what your strengths, your weaknesses are, opportunities and threats, right? Because if you did a SWOT analysis, say 3, 6 months or a year ago, guarantee it's changed. Right? It's a completely different environment. So then we got to sit down and we look at things like what sort of strategies can we implement going forward? What are the risks around? So, what are your competitors doing? What's happening in the industry? And what values does your product and service have? What are your strengths that your product or service has? And basically all that feeds into and basically provides a bit of a plan going forward of an action plan essentially of what needs to happen and what needs to be done going forward. So that's sort of the very high level of what I would say every business should be doing in some sort of shape or form.
How many small, like if we just talk small businesses for a second, obviously your one man bands, your sole traders, your very small units, up to say that sort of 15, 20 people. Give us a bit of a punt in terms of as a percentage. How many of those businesses do you reckon would actually do that sort of thing?
Let's be honest. Especially the one man sort of bands, you probably find they're doing it, but it's not documented. It's all happening up here. They're thinking, and like it's really great to think about. This is what I'm good at. This is what I struggle with. This is what my product or service can do. But sometimes you also need someone else to sort of give a bit of analysis as well. You need that second opinion. You need that sounding board. You need someone to go, oh, no, maybe you need to look at this as well, or maybe there's something in the industry that you haven't thought about. So, I would say very small percentage have actually sat down and documented it.
And I think that's a great point that you make there. All businesses need to get a second opinion on their thing. It's kind of like, everyone thinks that their baby's the cutest, right? But when we get a second opinion, it might, and from someone that has the nerve to even sort of attempt to say otherwise. You get a bit of a different answer, and essentially, if anyone starts a business, it is like another baby. It is an extension in the family, and we all look at them through rose-tinted spectacles. We all think that our stuff's the best, right? So it's a great point to make, and I've had a coach over the last few months, and it's one of those things, right? Whether it's a coach or your accountant or something like that. I mean, do you feel that it's wise to get opinions from number crunchers like yourself, as well as creative types? Also, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the P&L doesn't lie. Logic doesn't lie. The PL doesn't lie. P&L doesn't lie. So, it is a no-brainer that you should be doing it with your accountant. And obviously, this is great timing because obviously we're coming towards the end of the financial year. So, guys, gang, if you haven't got your appointments set with your accountant to go through the peaks and troughs, the goods and bad, you need your head checking, or you need to sell your business and go find something else to do, especially with what's gone on. If you haven't learned that lesson now, then my word, right? Yeah.
I think now is a very good time to have a very good relationship with your accountant or your business advisor. So, like, one of the key things, and this is something I deal with all the time, is if your accounting file is not at a point where you can get answers from it at a very quick, streamlined pace, like if you can't see what happened last month within the first week of the end of the month, if your bookkeeping is not being done at a rate that you are able to get information from that to analyze the financials from your business, then you're not really getting the full value from the data that's there. So, your accountant or your business advisor needs up-to-date information from your accounting system. And then, you need to have a good relationship with them right now, because they can provide a huge amount of support to you, whether it's looking at your cash flow, looking at your financial performance, looking at, benchmarking what's happening in the industry, what are your competitors doing? Your accountant or business advisor should be able to provide that information to you and have those discussions with you. So, your accountant or bookkeeper even, should be able to help you out with that. And you need to be contacting them right now.
Right? It's a bit like, and I've fallen foul of this sometimes. I mean, because at the end of the day, so for me, and there'll be lots of people like me, I've really got, it's not like I can't do it, but I've really got no interest in learning the ins and outs of I don't need to know the intricacies of the internals of your calculator, because they're not my strengths. We're just purely based on attention span. But at the same time, it's my business. We have to be proactive in going and getting those second opinions from those that are more educated and or they just don't have that emotional connection to the baby that you're trying to grow. It's absolutely critical, and that's why you guys, Shannon, you'd be that subjective about so much. I mean, how do you feel? Right, turn it back on you. How do you feel about your own business? Can you remain? Can you keep hold of that subjectivity when it comes to your own business, or do you get a little bit of a second opinion yourself? How does it happen when the tables are turned?
Yeah, it is difficult because you have that emotional aspect to it. Like sometimes, like we'll look at things like, just as a clear example, cash. Like you look at a cash flow going forward, right? You're looking at different scenarios and things like that, and you're going through it with a business owner, and they'll go, "No, that won't happen. I'm expecting this." And I'm like, but based on your trends, it's looking like this.
Right.
And if things go wrong, it could end up like this. And sometimes they'll look at it and go, nah, they're unsure, they're not happy. But sometimes seeing those numbers sort of triggers things in their mind, and it's like, all right, now because I know this, I need to start making these decisions, or I need to start doing these actions. Yeah, I mean, every business owner thinks they know their business, and they generally do, let's be honest. They know their business better than anyone else, but it really does need that second opinion, that a little extra analysis, an expert in a different area to look at it from a different viewpoint. And that's where ideas and plans start flourishing, and that's when business owners start thinking, all right, now I need to change this, or I got to do this. It's sort of a lot of it is trying to think ahead and planning ahead and trying to take control of what you're doing rather than reacting to things. I think is crucial. So if a business, and unfortunately with COVID-19, basically every business had to react in some way, shape, or form. But now we sort of have a better understanding of what's going on to a certain degree, but now is the time to plan and take control and basically implement your plans from here on. So yeah.
Now I know that none of us have got that magical crystal ball, and especially with everything changing as much as it is doing. But based on the early behaviours, the rate of change that you've seen out of your customers and clients and whatnot, and then looking ahead. Obviously, we need to perhaps bring in the whole topic of the recession into play as well now, to a degree. Let's just give you a scenario. So let's say that I'm a business that has, done okay. They've reacted relatively with a relative degree of pace that has allowed them to get the job keeper, so on and so forth, and they're not faring too bad. How do you see their 2020 playing out based on that sort of behavior of, we weren't the quickest to react, but we weren't that bad either? So how do you see them playing out? And realistically, we'll talk about planning, but on top of that, really, what are the sort of internal behaviors that you're really hoping to see from your clients in the second half of this year?
So, yeah, JobKeeper, I think at the moment has put a lot of businesses in a position where they're feeling comfortable and things are going well. Now, depending on the industry, depending on the business, I mean, going forward, one of the key things I sort of like to focus on is the fact that JobKeeper is going to end. September is sort of, at the moment, based on what's happening, it's going to end at that point. So I think businesses need to make sure that their cash flow is going to be okay at that point as well. So I like to think that businesses are at the moment they're really looking at their cash flow, looking at what their sales at the moment might be good, but will those sales increase? Will they drop? You need to plan ahead. Think about, all right, what happens with my cash flow if this happens? What happens if what if my sales drop by 10%? What if my sales drop by 20? What if they increase by a certain amount? You need to look at going, all right, well, how long can my business survive without this government support under those scenarios? Not all businesses, some businesses, as things improve, they're going to be able to bring more customers into their doors, but some businesses may not be able to, because this talk of recession may keep customers away. There may not be that confidence yet. People, whenever there's talk of recession, people don't like spending money. They'll hold on to it. So, if you're in an industry that may be affected by that, you need to plan for that. So, cash flow is probably a key one that I would say. Plan ahead, think about it. Do you need to look at getting some more funding? Do you need the cash reserves? Do you need to look at managing your costs now? Can you cut costs that without affecting your product or service, of course? Can you start cutting costs now? Another thing that I would say is people need to look at what their break-even point is. At what point of sales have you covered all your costs? Because if your break-even point, like the amount of sales that you need to get to that point, if that is not achievable based on government restrictions or basically on what the trend is at the moment, you're going to need to look at things like, well, I need to cut costs to bring that break-even point down, or do I need to close? I mean, unfortunately, but let's hope that's not the case. There's decisions around that. I hope that a lot of businesses have already looked at getting rent relief and things like that, or on JobKeeper. So, but yeah, unfortunately, those things are going to end. Yeah.
In terms of so I think because a couple of things. In a few industries, there's been a little bit of a excited sort of run of, oh, we can do stuff again. Let's splurge a little bit. I think that's safe to say that that's what's happened recently, and apparently it's absolutely horrendous over in the US. Like the amount of people that have ordered stuff online and can't even remember what they bloody ordered. Like they've just got parcels turning up willy-nilly. So a greater awareness around that from a consumer point of view. These sales may not, this initial excitement may well dissipate to a degree. And we're not being negative Nellies or anything by any stretch, but we've got to look at trends and actually make sure that the positive that we're talking about is the fact that businesses are rocking and rolling by the end of the year and they are kicking on. So the other thing that I really wanted to highlight with you is how many businesses do you feel are getting lured potentially into that sort of small sense of, like that little bit of a sense of security of this, $3,000 a month JobKeeper thing or whatever it is. Like how from a concern point of view, how concerned are you that there is a degree of sort of apathy towards it because it's been going for a little bit and there's a bit of an emotional sort of dependence upon it, that it might be a bit of a shock to the system, even though we all know that it's going to end, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think quite a few. They're sitting back. They're running around, basically running along as if everything's sort of operating as normal because, well, one, at the moment, their employees are costing them a lot less from JobKeeper. They've got extra money coming in. They've had the cash flow support, government grants and things like that. So there are a lot of businesses that are either upgrading their technology and in many cases, maybe they need to, because let's be honest, maybe you do need to be investing in technology right now because, you need to be getting, maybe your product or service needs to go, a better online sort of presence. Maybe your product needs to be, you need to upgrade your online store or whatever other things that you need to do. So, I think if businesses are doing that and investing in a way that's going to help them going forward, I think that's fantastic. But yeah, I think at the moment, a lot of them are sitting comfortable. I mean, a lot of them, things like our BAS payments and another tax debts that businesses incur, it's either been paid for by the cash flow support, or some businesses aren't really paying it at the moment, or they're on really, really good payment plans and things like that with the ATO at the moment, which is fantastic. And businesses need that right now because they are in a bit of strife. But you need to realize that these debts are going to come up.
Yeah.
They are going to have to be paid at some point. So you need to make sure that your sales, your income coming in, your plans and strategies going forward incorporate that as well. So yeah, do you need
super important points that you're making there, mate, with regards to the tax side of things, because there will be so many people that have deferred BAS payments, or they've just ignored them because let's face it, the ATO have got plenty of battles to be getting on with right now. So there'll be a whole bunch of small businesses that will be flying under the radar, thinking that they've not paid their tax. And again, that's the great concern, that I think if we can wake everybody up and say, gang, you need to look at your BAS bill. You need to look at your tax bill that's going to come through, and it will be coming through. I mean, how else is the nation going to be paying for all of these JobKeeper things? You really think that they're just going to write them off? I don't think so. But as well as that, I think a really smart move, which is what you mentioned there, is we've got to get our heads out of this whole security blanket with the JobKeeper and the grants and whatnot. We need to sort of look at our business, our cash flow, as if that wasn't there. Because if you do that, if you get your head into that and think, right, because firstly, that $3,000 can go towards the BAS bills that you haven't paid yet. But also, just for your own health and well-being, knowing that your sales are tracking square, your business is on the right trajectory, irrespective of that government assistance. Because the big concern will be that gets switched off, and all of a sudden that's when, like you said, there'll be that same mentality of wait until it's happened before panicking, which is never a smart move, right? Never a smart move. Now, Ria, last question, mate, before I let you crack on with your weekend, and I really do appreciate your time, and thanks ever so much for joining us. With regards to getting through that initial sort of shock, end of September, government stops the tap, stops the money coming through, assuming that everything stays as is. And you mentioned briefly about investing in technology and what have you. One of the other big things that a lot of businesses are starting to really think about and shift their thinking in is commercial premises and commercial leases and so on and so forth. How have you found that landscape with your businesses? I mean, how many of your businesses have got premises that they've like you said, talking about rent relief and what have you? But that's not going to last forever, right? Either. So, give us your opinion on that element of business with respect to commercial leasing and owning premises with respect to what could go on in the future.
I've had a few mixed responses from some people. I've had some people sort of everyone's working from home at the moment, and they're sort of sitting there going, well, everything's operating normally, everything's fine. Maybe I don't need that commercial premises. Maybe I don't need to be paying for that office, that major, huge expense. So there has been some talk of a lot of businesses basically closing down their premises because they're able to operate without it. I've had some people talk about going, oh, well, maybe we don't need as big of a premises either. That's another one that I've heard. But yeah, in a lot of cases, there is concerns with the ability to pay rent going forward as well. So this rent relief has been fantastic for a lot of clients. But yeah, I mean, a lot of them, unfortunately, a lot of them need their business premises in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I have heard a little bit of talk about a lot of shift and change that may occur with commercial properties going forward.
Interesting. Interesting. I mean, look, the concern. I mean, knowing a few people in that commercial sector, that could be a very, very interesting landscape. I mean, it's good that, like you said, it's good to see that, there are still plenty of business. I mean, look, any business with equipment, machinery, those sorts of things, they're not going to go away, obviously. But the office sector, like the office spaces and those sorts of spaces where it's, also sit at a desk stuff, well, they've all just been doing that at home. It'll be really interesting to see, though, liaising with our good friend Diana Cooperman from HR Advisor. She's seeing a lot of businesses really looking to shore up their contracts in making sure that their staff do return to work as well. So I think a little bit of a watch this space with that, because I think trust with employees is going to basically be the make or break for a lot of these commercial premises, right? Very, very interesting. Look, Shannon, mate, thank you so much for giving us your little insider info on what you've seen over the course of the last few months. I really like your advice on making sure that, gang, get yourselves a second opinion. Make sure it's a logical one before you go to the creative one. So make sure you go to Shannon before you come to me, so to speak. But make sure you get that second opinion from somebody, because you will be looking at it through rose-tinted spectacles. We are, by design, ideally, optimistic people, unless you're from England and then you just whinge about everything. But most of the time we are optimistic people, and we want you to remain optimistic, but it needs to be practical optimism. That was the whole point of the silver lining at the very beginning, is it's practical positivity. It's no BS. It's no rah-rah. There will be very little to be positive about if you don't get your plan for your business in place ASAP. That is a stern warning from Shannon, and he does karate and fighting and all sorts of stuff. So I'm telling you now, he could probably swing a fist or two at you if you don't pay attention to him. Isn't that right, Shannon?
Yes, I'll try.
Look, mate, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been so valuable getting your insights on the silver lining. The practicality that you brought to the show tonight has been absolutely wonderful. So thanks ever so much, man. And you enjoy the rest of your weekend, all right?
Same to you. Ta.
Take care, buddy.
Thanks.